Today's episode of the Counselling Tutor Podcast is sponsored by Web Healer. You're a counsellor in private practice and you need a website, or you've got an existing website which you need help with. Web Healer are offering Counselling Tutor Podcast listeners, that's you, £100 off the cost of a website design and build. Now, Web Healers specialise in websites for counsellors and psychotherapists. It's what they do. And the Web Healer team provide a completely non-technical, done-for-you solution, leaving you to focus your time on your clients. Operating for 20 years, Web Healer are a trusted resource amongst counsellors when it comes to getting your practice online. So get the package details and claim your £100 off coupon for your new website by going to counsellingtutor.com/website. That's counsellingtutor.com/website.
Hello and welcome to episode 361 of the Counselling Tutor Podcast. I'm Rory, and today we're delighted to welcome back Manchester-based psychotherapist Claire Ratcliffe, who last joined us in episode 328. Claire works with individuals, couples and groups around the UK and internationally with a practice that includes couples and relationship therapy, sex therapy, and she's also the host of the podcast Healing Relationships with Ourselves and Others and the World. Today, Claire joins us to explore an essential and often overlooked distinction in therapy, the difference between feeling safe and being safe in therapy. So with that said, let's roll the intro.
Welcome to the Counselling Tutor Podcast, the must-listen-to podcast for counsellors, psychotherapists and counselling students. Here are your hosts, Rory Oakes and Ken Kelly.
Hello and a very warm welcome to episode 361 of the Counselling Tutor Podcast with Rory Oakes and Ken Kelly. Rory and I are going to be taking you on a journey today of our 3 stops that starts with that ethical, sustainable practice, where today we're dipping our toe into why counsellors feel isolated. If you're a counsellor in practice, I'm sure you can relate to that at some level. If you're a student, stay tuned. It's an important topic. Then moving on to Practice Matters. And today in Practice Matters, as Rory has beautifully already introduced, we have Claire Ratcliffe, and we're speaking about feeling safe versus being safe in therapy. 2 different things. And then we move into student services, and this is where we recognise you, students, on your formal journey to be a counsellor, a psychotherapist, or to gain those skills. And today we're going to be speaking about how to reference non-academic resources in assignments. And this includes things like Counselling Tutor. We have a website with absolutely hundreds and hundreds of free resources. We also have a library with many hundreds of lectures and resources. How are these non-academic resources or support resources referenced in your assignments? But starting us off, Rory, that important topic, why counsellors feel isolated. And I think this is a bigger topic than some of us might like to believe, Rory.
I think it is, Ken. I think it is. And this has been an interesting conversation in our Facebook page. And if you're not a member of the Counselling Tutor Facebook page, as we always say, Facebook, Counselling Tutor, come and see us and join the conversation. And one of the threads was people feeling isolated. And I think one of the reasons that counsellors feel isolated is 2 things. The nature of the work, which by its very nature is confidential and carried out usually one-to-one, although with couples counselling there could be 2 people in the room, but usually one-to-one. And you work alone in private practice, and nowadays remotely, which is another aspect, and it can reduce everyday professional contact. I can share a little observation from my own experience. When I was a student counsellor, just coming to the end of my student years before qualifying, I worked in an agency. So when I went into the agency, I'd go in, I'd see clients, and then I'd see loads of other people. We'd have conversations, and we might go out for a coffee, and occasionally a couple of times a year they put on a nice meal for the volunteers, and it was all very lovely. And then I worked as a school counsellor, And that was okay. I worked with the young people, and I got talking to the teachers, and you just have conversations with people, and that was okay. Then I started in my own private practice, and I may speak to the receptionist who ran the counselling rooms, and just have a bit of a chat. How are you doing? What's going on? And then I went to work online when the pandemic came,
Yeah.
and I'd never met anyone. And I think there's that aspect of things, and also the emotional labour that is needed for being a counsellor. You know, I as you did, Ken, I worked for 20 odd years as a sales representative, travel the country on my own, and I never had a problem. I spent a lot of time on my own because when I came back, I could say to my wife would say, "What have you been doing?" I said, "Well, I went here and I did that and I spoke to this person." When I came out of my office, my wife said, "Are you all right?" And I went, "Yes," because I couldn't talk about my work because of the nature of confidentiality. And I couldn't share the emotional labour. And I think it takes a toll eventually. And I think all therapists, don't want to be too preachy here, but I think all therapists need to think about the emotional labour aspect and make connections, find something that connects you to other people, because I think if you work alone for too long, I think it can have a corrosive effect.
Oh, yes. Very, very much so. And that corrosive effect leads on to affecting the client's journey in some cases. And I was thinking about this when I was looking over and thinking about this topic, Rory, that counseling or psychotherapy is unlike anything else, maybe except being a spy. I think if you're a spy, you can't tell people what you did that day. And maybe it's a little bit the same in counseling and psychotherapy. You can face incredibly heavy emotional waves coming your way from clients' presentation. We are human. We are there in an empathic relationship. Part of us is receiving that energy, yet it's difficult to dissipate that energy if we can't talk about it. So when we get home that night and we have somebody else to speak to, we can't say, "Oh, I had this kind of a day and this happened to me." We just have to leave that behind, as you mentioned, Rory, and leave that behind. So if we're leaving it behind, I get that. We are working to a boundary, but maybe we're not leaving it behind internally. Maybe there is a cost to that. There is an isolation. I can't share this, excepting maybe I can go to my supervisor once a month and offload things that I'm carrying. So it's no wonder that counsellors can feel isolated, and that emotional labor that you're speaking about, I mean, that is a very real word. We're dealing with others' emotions on a daily basis, and there's a term, compassion fatigue, and compassion fatigue is where we've spoken about it on the podcast before, but it is where our rate of compassion for the information we're getting may drop because we're having these waves come at us all the time, and that is one of the effects of this emotional labor hitting us when we don't have a way to deal with that, and we're looking at self-isolation within that, Rory. It's, I guess, unlike everyday exchanges. You might have a bad day in the office, and you can go in and you can say to your workmates, "You know what, I'm having a bad day today," and there'll be some understanding. But as a counselor, can you say to a client, "You know what, I'm having a bad day. I've got some emotions going around in me"? Well, no, we arrive in a professional capacity, and we although we're being congruent in our true selves, there's maybe a little part of us that we put one side, of our personal selves that we put one side. And I guess this topic, Rory, is about who's taking care of that little bit that we put to the one side.
Yeah, who cares for the carers, Ken?
Yeah.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? And I think it's incumbent on ourselves to care for ourselves. One of the greatest lessons I learned in my very early career as a trainee, when I did my introduction, was Anna, who was my tutor, seemed to have a very busy social life. She was either out and about with having coffee with friends, or she would go to counsellor meetups. She also, her son was a guitarist, lead guitarist in quite a famous band. and she would go to his gigs, and she would have a good old dance and enjoy herself. She never seemed to be at home. And I caught up with her and I said, "You're always very busy." And she said, I have to be because the work is so demanding that she needed outside activities. And she did that. She travelled. She went all over the world with the band, meeting up with them. Now, I'm not saying that every therapist, would have that life, but I think that, if you're working for yourself and you're sort of online working, or maybe in the room working, and you go home and then you come back to work, might be worth thinking about what else can I do? What things can I do? Can I develop my friendships more? Community involvement, physical activity is great. Going for a walk, or if you're able to go for a run. Learning for pleasure, anything except counselling. A completely different thing.
Yeah. Well, and interestingly enough, I mean, you say that, Rory, you say anything other than counselling, but I also note that, doing CPD can help with that. Just mixing with other counsellors, hearing other people speak, having peers that you sit around with and just hear their day-to-day can help as well. So I guess counselling can be part of ways of reducing that isolation as well, Rory.
Yeah, I was kind of being a bit humorous. My feeble attempts at being humorous, Ken. But,
I'm laughing.
Yeah,
I'm laughing.
Yeah, I'm laughing. Yeah, I know. But yeah, I think that doing something that gives you pleasure, I think that's the key. Pleasure. Finding something for yourself. A choir. I don't know, tap dancing class. All the people I've ever met who were therapists always had quite interesting and esoteric hobbies, musical theatre, joining a choir, all this kind of thing to support their well-being. And I think that it's one of those things that one has to proactively do. I think I think if it can creep up on you, the demands of the work, and it can creep up on you until you are in that space with the client where you're thinking, I don't really want to be here. I've got so much weight I'm carrying. And at that point, with the greatest respect to that person, you're not really in service of the client. You really need to help yourself. Yeah. So, I think my message would be start tap dancing or join a choir or anything that gives you pleasure. Anything. That's legal.
And I think when you're saying that, Rory, if you find yourself at that point in therapy where you might be with a client going, I don't want to be here, it's gone too far. And what we're speaking about now is being aware of this, and then being able to look out for it, and then being able to mitigate or put things in place so that it is less likely to come about for us. Knowing about it is one thing, and that is very, very important. And then I guess what can we do? Well, Rory's already mentioned, hobbies, doing things that are outside of counselling, things that light you up, things where you can put the day down and do a complete mind change to something else. We've spoken about networking, speaking with other therapists, and just normalizing this kind of a feeling. We wouldn't be discussing what's going on with our clients, but we can normalize the feelings that we might carry around that. And then, of course, there's the most important work we can do, and that is the personal development work. So as reflective practitioners, we're using some form of reflection, whether you make audio files or you write or you journal or you draw or you doodle or you color. You're doing something to express what might be going on within you. And that personal development work continues, hopefully forever, at least for our lives. And then there are reflective questions that you can ask yourself when doing that personal development work. So when do I notice feelings of isolation most strongly in my work? If you can see a pattern or some kind of topic or some kind of a presentation maybe that comes up, how do I experience emotional labor in my counselling role? Just by asking that question. You might be going, well, do I really? Well, sitting down and asking these questions might show a not seen to self part that you can take into supervision and really delve deep into. How do I currently use supervision to support my well-being? And what activities outside of counselling help me feel most like myself? All self-reflective questions that you can do in your personal development time around this topic. Rory, some key takeaways.
Well, I think that we need to acknowledge that isolation and emotional labour are more common than we would think, and they're very understandable as well. Our work is demanding in a way that perhaps other professional work isn't. So I'm not trying to discount colleagues in other areas of helping work, but I think there's some unique factors in therapy which can really erode us, and the emotional labour is one. And I think if we prioritise self-care, we prioritise how we use supervision, we engage in meaningful relationships, and have a life outside counselling, we will sustain our well-being, and also will extend our working life. And I think that's something that's not often looked upon, because the brightest star does burn the shortest time, so the saying goes. And I think that I've seen lots of colleagues burn out with the work, and because they haven't prioritised self-care as much. And I don't want to again be preachy, but self-care is an ethical imperative. It's mentioned in ethical frameworks from all the ethical bodies, BACP, NCPS. It is a ethical imperative. So if you are enjoying yourself and you're thinking I shouldn't be doing that, you can say I'm being ethical as I sing, dance, or do whatever makes you happy.
Like it. That's a beautiful wrap up on that. There is a handout that Rory has created for this, one of Rory's super duper handouts, as we call them. It is free of charge. You can get it from the Counselling Tutor website. Just go to our website, counsellingtutor.com, click on the podcast tab, make your way to episode 361, and you'll find the free download of Managing Isolation in Counselling Practice right there for you. And I'm going to note something, one last thing that is on this handout, and it's the reference section at the bottom. I'm going to just mention that because we are going to be speaking about referencing in student services in just a moment's time. And if we look at the references at the bottom here, it's done in Harvard referencing. It's as Rory mentioned, it's the BACP ethical framework, the NCPS ethical framework have been referenced in this, putting this information together, as has a book and the Managed Heart Commercialization of Human Feelings by Hochschild, A.R., Berkeley, CA, University of California Press. So you'll get all of those references as well if you want to delve a little bit deeper into this topic. But we'll get to why I read those out in a little bit. But for now, we move out of ethical sustainable practice, Rory, and we go into practice matters. And you've already introduced today, we've got Claire Ratcliffe, who's speaking about feeling safe versus being safe in therapy.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation. Claire is a mine of information, as well as being just a lovely, lovely person. And she shares her observations on the difference between feeling safe in therapy and being safe. And I'm going to give you a little heads up. She's going to do a lecture for our counsellor CPD library on this very topic. So keep watching for that. And I caught up with her, and this is what she had to say. It's such a pleasure to be joined again by Claire Ratcliffe, a Manchester-based psychotherapist and indeed a fellow podcaster. Claire recently shared a really thoughtful post on LinkedIn titled Feeling Safe versus Being Safe in Therapy, which really got people thinking for a very, very good reason. In today's conversation, we're going to unpack what the difference means in practice and why it matters so much in the therapy room. So, Claire, it's absolutely lovely to have you back with us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me back, Rory. It's so nice to see you again.
Yes, and I was struck a few months ago. I saw a post, I think it was by Aaron Stevens, who said the perception of you offering I paraphrase here, by the way, the perception of what you believe as a therapist offering a safe space and what the client believes is a safe space might be two different things. So I guess the opening question is, what do we really mean by safety?
Yeah, and Erin's absolutely right in saying that, because we each have our own nervous systems, we have our own histories and different experiences, and what we believe is safe may not be the same for the other person. So in the video that I'd uploaded, it was about feeling safe and actually being safe. So being safe in terms of the therapist being somebody who is qualified and experienced, has their own supervision. They are safe with you in terms of boundaries and creating as much as they can a safe space, being consistent, being predictable, those kind of things that we need. And feeling safe, we might have a therapist who is incredibly safe for us, but the actual process of entering into therapy might not feel safe. And that could be for anything really to do with our historical experiences. Being in therapy requires being vulnerable, talking about how you feel, exploring difficult situations. And if those things were not safe for you in your history, opening up, being vulnerable, talking about how you feel, your nervous system is not going to feel safe entering into that process. You'd have to take very small, steady steps and have really a steady therapist in that experience as well, because sometimes for some clients it can take many, many sessions before they feel okay to open up. So those for me are the differences really in the safety.
Yes. So, I mean, to use a driving analogy, you might be a passenger in a car that's got all the safety bags and all the safety equipment, but you may have had a car crash, a few years ago. And when you get in the car, doesn't matter how safe the driver is, how safe the vehicle is, you're still very, very nervous and still inside maybe quite scared and frightened.
Exactly, because your body is going to remember what happened when we were last in the car, that we were at risk, that we had an accident. Whenever we enter into any kind of situation, our nervous system looks at all the data that we have based on what this situation represents. So getting into a car, if that hasn't been safe, if we have had an accident or anything like that, we are going to remember that until we show our system that it is safe to be back in a car again. So we've got the safe car, we've got the safe driver, and we'd have to enter into that experience again and again and again and again to show our system that it is actually safe to be in a car again. And of course, accidents do happen and it could happen again. But in order for us to be able to drive again and go places, then we'd have to show our system it is okay for us to have this experience again.
Yes. And as a therapist, what is the therapist's role in this? Bearing in mind that the therapist might think, well, I'm okay, I've got a nice safe space, but what's the considerations that a therapist might have to bring to this?
So I think the safety that they can bring, and us as therapists, like we want to create a safe space, and it's what that looks like really, because it is a relational experience. We are entering into a relationship with our client. And when they look at all their past data of what being in relationship with family, friends, colleagues, and all of that has, we might immediately not be overly safe to them, or they might really need to get to know us more, like seeing us each week for many sessions before they feel more comfortable with us. And it's us being open, really, to receive that. So what clients can often do is, because we have transference in therapy, they may project things onto us. And I think when that happens, we have to be a steady therapist to be able to take and tolerate that and work with the client through that, not become defensive, not try to overly reassure, not try to dismiss what the client is saying. And I say this because they may have had that historically in their experience. And us as therapists have to show that it is safe to be open and to talk to us, and it's in our responses and our relational experience that we then show them that we are a safe person, we are a safe object. Because there is so much that comes up with that, I think, in transference as well.
Yeah. So in very simple terms, if I'm seeing a female client who's had a very bad experience of men, they may see me as the representation of the men that have done them harm. And that might bring up all the feelings and anxieties and defense mechanisms that are around that trauma. And I think sometimes in my experience, I've actually had female clients say to me, well, I've been hurt by men like you. And my response is, I really understand that, my sex, if you like, men, has hurt you. However, I'm not one of those people, but I understand that it might take a bit of time. It's about having the conversations, I think, sometimes, isn't it? And being real in the moment.
Yeah, yeah. And the clients know that they can have that conversation with you, because if a client is coming and saying, I have been hurt by somebody like you, or you remind me of somebody who has hurt me in the past, we have to do the exploration with that, because we could very easily, if we've not done our own work or are not continuing to do our own work in therapy and supervision, we could say, oh no, well, I've never hurt you, or something like that, to like reassure them. We don't know that. We don't know we're not going to hurt them. We don't know that by going on holiday, that's not going to hurt them. We don't know that by looking at the clock because we're checking on the time of how long we've been in the session, that that's not going to hurt them. So we can't like step in and reassure like that. But we do have a responsibility to explore, like, how were you hurt? Who hurt you? What about me reminds you of them?
Yes.
So that they can start to like disentangle and decouple like who we are with who that person was, or what we represent for them. And then they know, by having this conversation, it's safe, you're open, you're willing to listen, that we're not being defensive. Because that then is where they learn that they can have a safe relationship with us.
Yes. And what are the signs maybe that, a client's nervous system may be catching up, that they're more in the here and now than the there and then? Because transference is about time machine, isn't it? It's about past feelings being projected onto the here and now and onto a particular object or person. But what are the signs that maybe the nervous system is or indeed the brain is starting to catch up and is more in the here and now than the there and then?
So my experience of this, I think, is when, and other therapists might listen to this and think of their own experiences of when they've noticed this happen with a client, is when a client feels okay to tell you how they feel about you, or something that you've done that has contributed to them feeling a certain way. So, for example, if you're working with a client who, in their history, it has never been safe for them to tell their parents or caregivers, you've really upset me, you've really hurt me, I'm really angry now because of what you've just done. Like, if that was dismissed, minimized, or they'd be punished or something like that, their system knows it's not safe to express that. But then if a client comes to you, and I had this experience, it was many, many years ago now, it's probably about 10 years ago, and a client who never was able to say anything like that to their parents. This is familiar with lots of clients, like so many people will be able to relate to this. Was never able to say, you've really hurt me, you've really upset me. And then one day came into a session and said, at the end of that last session, you really peed me off. And I was like, oh, okay. Now inside, I was having a mini celebration, and I had to hold that because I was going to say, oh my God, you're actually telling me that I upset you. You must feel safe with me. But I held that and I said, tell me more about what it was that I said. What did it remind you of? How were you left feeling? How have you processed this in between the session? What work did it take for you to get here to actually tell me? So they were like, I was really anxious. I didn't want to say it. I was worried that you'd be upset with me. I thought that you might not want to see me again. You wouldn't want me as a client. But I knew that I had to bring it to you because this is what we talked about. I'll say, I want you to see if you can bring it to me. So I then knew you are feeling safe with me because you'd done all that work. You were thinking, should I take it? Should I not? What's the worst thing that could happen based on your old historical experiences that our body still remembers? And you still came to me and told me. And then we got to look at, can you see how far you've come? Can you see where now you feel safe, that you could tell me that you were upset with me, that you didn't like what I'd said, and nothing bad is happening from you telling me that. And this is showing your nervous system again and again and again that it is okay for you to share your experience and your feelings and nothing bad happens. Now, sometimes people can react and not be okay with it, but we need to show ourselves that we can still advocate for ourselves and it be okay and activate that healthy aggression that I can tell you that I'm not happy with something that you said and the world isn't going to end. You're going to be okay and we can talk about it. And that is then something they get to keep within themselves. So it doesn't just apply to me, it applies to the rest of the world, all their, other experiences with other people. They're carrying a new experience in their system that they get to have relationally with others as well.
Yes.
So that's how I would see it.
Yes, it's quite a paradoxical thing, really, isn't it? Because they're, to the untrained kind of observer, this getting upset with you may look like a failure on the therapist's part, but actually it's a success on the part of the client because they're able to tell you, hey, you've really upset me or you've hacked me off and really challenge you. And within that, they can only do that if there's safety in the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I felt so good being told that. And I know that if I had been in a place of, I'd not done my own work, I was super sensitive to any kind of criticism, which if you are as a therapist, you definitely have to work on where that's coming from. If I didn't, have the training or the supervision and all of that, imagine if I'd have said to that client, what do you mean that I said something that annoyed you? No, I didn't. Or, oh, well, I never meant to. Or, oh, I'm really, really sorry. Let's just leave it. I'm so sorry that I said that. Let's just leave it. We would have lost the opportunity to really discover something new and to have a relational experience that could be a really healing experience. If I'd have got defensive, or sometimes what can happen is people want to quickly put a blanket apology on and reassure because I don't want you to feel bad. I don't want to feel bad that I've hurt you, so let's just apologise and move on. And that's where we do miss the opportunity to not only repair, but learn what was that like for you, how much we've grown in our own therapeutic journey. And there's so much missed if you don't do that. So that's why therapists having therapy is so important as well.
Absolutely. And it does link to, what we now describe as how to work with and repair ruptures in the relationship by not shying away from them or not saying, well, maybe I'm not the therapist for you if you're getting that upset about me, to say, let's talk about this, and explore it. And I think it takes a sense of centeredness and courage on behalf of the therapist to do that. You have to know yourself, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to have an element of thick skin, really, because clients can and should and do project a lot onto us, and that's okay. We might represent their mum or their dad or a sibling or something like that, and we have to be able to hold it and work with it because that is the work. That is the work that we're doing. And if you can't tolerate that, then it is a disservice then for the client and for ourselves because it does take so much, but that is what the training and learning and experience is. Your own work, your own inner healing and all of that. That's why it's so important.
It's true. And it also happens in training. Many years ago, I was training as students on the kind of brain and limbic system of the brain and how it lives in the past, and also the kind of autonomous nervous system. So if you rub the hairs on the back of your hand, you can't switch that sensation off, and that is sometimes something clients struggle with if they've been abused. The sensations are very strong, but they weren't sensations that they wanted or asked for or needed. And the next time I had the class, one of my students who had sadly been abused came in and said, "Can I have a word with you?" And started shouting at me and waving a finger. And what I did was I realised what was going on. I just sat down and let her stand over me. And after a bit, she stopped. And I said, how are you now? And she went, "I'm all right." I said, "What was it like to be able to shout at me?" And she said, "It was good." And I said, "What does that tell you?" And it was exactly the same process. Oh my God, how far I've come. And I'm now happy to say we're great friends. She talked with me, and then we went on to, know each other and have a coffee from time to time. I mean, it comes up a lot when we talk. But it's that powerful, almost absorbing the emotional impact in the service of the client.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you think about that client and their history, that they were being abused and they would not have been able to access that anger, that healthy aggression, that get away from me, don't ever touch me again. That wouldn't have been possible for them. And it's stored them within the system. Sometimes it's suppressed so much that they can't access that anger. But then when you're with someone who is safe, and sometimes this then happens with our partners, but then that person was then safe with you and you're going to get this now. And sometimes their anger might seem disproportionate to the situation.
Yes.
And that can sometimes certainly happen. But then when you actually slow down, you sat down and said, "What was that like?" And nothing bad happened to them. They weren't punished. That shifts something within them. And it doesn't mean this person can shout at you every time and I'm just going to sit down with this person. But in that did show something. And now your relationship's developed, and that's a memory that you have really of where they were able to demonstrate that, perhaps that healthy aggression.
Yes.
And that would have been something that most likely would not have been possible for them historically.
Yeah. Comes up in training a lot. And I also sometimes think that sometimes even safety can feel threatening. Yeah. So, sometimes you feel there's a safe environment, but for some clients they just don't feel safe. What do you think's going on there?
Yeah, it's looking at what safety is. So if you think of what safety is, it might be calm, it might be playful, it might be feeling that you can be creative and spontaneous. It might be that there is a stillness, and that is alien to some people. For some clients, that just isn't in their realm of experience whatsoever. So when they are in that, where someone is calm or playful, that might actually just feel so threatening to their system, because of course we're going off all the data that we have, and actually if our data does not recognize that, our system does not recognize that experience, then we see it as not safe. So it is very, very slowly introducing that to our system. Like if I'm working with a client who says, I don't feel safe to play, or I can't play and have fun. And actually when I see people doing that, I don't like it. If we're out and we say, "Oh, let's play a game of whatever," my heart rate starts going. It doesn't feel good for me at all because I'm not used to that. It's not safe then to say to that client, "Right, we'll just go and play. Go and have fun, go and do it." That is not safe for them. But it's slowly, very gradually, in very small steps, introducing that to their system. And I mean, in the smallest step, it might even be to watch a video of something that represents play or safety. Just watching a video, going sitting in a park and watching kids just have fun without you joining in, but you just watching it, letting your system see it and take it in. As this is what safety looks like. It might be looking at relationships that look safe and healthy. It might be watching programs that has absolutely nothing bad or triggering in it. It might be watching something that is for younger people or something like, just to show your system, because we have to show our system what looks like safety. So we're slowly introducing it, because if you are used to having chaos, instability, inconsistency, danger, and then someone shows you a safe life, we don't even recognise it. So we're certainly not going to enjoy it because our system's going to feel threatened.
Yeah. And also, I guess the nervous system and the brain is attuned to danger, and when there's no danger around, that can feel quite threatening, you know.
The thing is, if there's no danger, if our system is used to danger, the neuroception part of our system will be constantly on the lookout anyway and be hyper-vigilant. So every single second, we're always looking out for what's safe, dangerous, or life-threatening. But if we're used to danger, we will be hyper-alert that we might see something and perceive it as danger, even if it actually isn't. Even if we are actually safe in the present moment, our system might not know that. And we will think something is dangerous just because we are so used to that happening for us. So that's why we kind of need to do this work so we can enjoy our lives more.
Oh, I like the idea of that, Claire. And I think finally, if we think of safe person versus a safe process, so there's a distinct kind of difference there, isn't it, between being a safe person and the work that you're doing and the direction of the work being a safe process.
Yeah, because there is that the process might not always feel safe, and that's okay. We're not going to enter into therapy and it feel completely safe 100% of the time. If it does feel completely safe 100% of the time, what are you avoiding? Because I know I have a therapist who is safe, but there are still times I will speak to my therapist and I might think, what is she going to think about what I'm saying? Is she going to judge me? Is she going to not want to see me again? Or anything like that. And it doesn't mean that she is going to think those things about me, but it's because of my own experiences of the past, of if I was to open up like this with somebody, what would happen to me? Would it be understood? Would someone still be attuned to me? Would somebody care and be curious to know more? So the process itself can feel really vulnerable and threatening in some way to our system because we might be doing something that wasn't okay for us historically. So we've got a safe person, might have a very, very safe therapist, but the process doesn't feel safe. And sometimes I think people can get muddled up if they think that last therapy session was so uncomfortable, I don't even know if I want to go back. It's looking at why was it uncomfortable. It might have been uncomfortable because you were talking about something that brought up a lot of shame for you. And you're afraid of what the therapist might think of you or how they see you now. And that's why it's important to go back and to look at that with the therapist so that you can have a different kind of experience. So the process doesn't always feel safe, but it's asking yourself the question, am I safe with this therapist? Are they predictable? Are they consistent with me? Are they boundaried themselves? You know, we need to see it's that. And our system is always looking out for these things as well. Whether we say it or not, our system picks up on everything quicker than we ever could cognitively.
I think this has been an absolutely fascinating conversation. And I think it's a discussion that every therapist needs to either discuss in supervision or discuss with a peer or be reflective on. Because what you've highlighted is that what we feel safe, and this kind of links into Erin Stevens' post, what we believe to feel safe may not be safe for the clients, and we need to find a way of bridging that gap and having the attunement with our clients to pick up where we may get signals and be open and honest about it. Yeah. I think this is worthy of a part 2, to be honest, Claire. There's so much more we could have uncovered, including working with neurodivergent clients. So I'd invite you back if you're willing to perhaps record a part 2 on this in the future. And it just goes for me to say, Claire Ratcliffe, thank you for joining me.
Practice Matters is proudly sponsored by the Counsellor CPD Library. To access top quality, relevant continuing professional development for your practice, that you can do at a time that suits you, and all for less than the price of a cup of coffee. Visit counsellingtutor.com. Massive thank you to our guest, Claire Ratcliffe, and to you, Rory, for inviting our guests, holding those all-important discussions. We now move from practice matters right into student services. And today in student services, we're going to be speaking about how to reference non-academic resources in assignments. Now, there is a link. I hope you've been listening to the whole podcast, because when we came out of Ethical Sustainable Practice, I read the references at the bottom of the document there. What do we need to know about referencing, Rory?
Well, yeah. So when you reference work, what you're doing is you're saying that I'm answering the question I'm being asked in my assignment by reading information that's written by academics or people who've written books on the subject, and I'm giving a view depending on the way the question's asked. So if it's critically analyse, you would use literature to reinforce your thinking on the analysis of the question being asked. Critically analyse Carl Rogers' 6 necessary and sufficient conditions. And you wouldn't write, Rory says that these conditions are. What you would say is that Rogers in Client Centered Therapy in 1957, Journal of Consulting Psychology, brought these conditions as part of the therapeutic mood, if you like, of how a therapist work. And then what you might do is you might bring another writer in, another thinker, saying one criticism of these conditions is, and then you'd cite the academic. And what you'd be doing is a critical appraisal. And to do that, you would use academic books. Now, the difference with academic books, especially works by people like Rogers and Freud and a lot of the academics, is they're a bit impenetrable because they were written 50 years ago in a different time, usually in the United States of America, and although they share a common language with us, sometimes the kind of meaning can feel a little different, and it can be a little bit, as I said, impenetrable. So what you might do is you might use a website that kind of explains the information to get a handle on what's being said. That gives you a kind of working understanding, and then you could go back to the literature and then get a better understanding of the literature and quote the literature. And that is what your tutors want. They want to see that you're getting the information, generally speaking, from academic resources. Tutors like ourselves love people quoting from books, because it proves that people are studying the subjects at a certain level. So that would be my take on it, Ken.
So it's a good take there, Rory. I like it very, very much. And
Thanks
I
very
guess
much.
the reason we decided to bring this topic up is, again, within Facebook, you guys have the discussions, and we're always paying attention. And there was a reference to quoting or referencing Counselling Tutor in assignments, and tutors saying, no, you can't. I don't want you referencing Counselling Tutor in your assignment. And they're 100% correct. Counselling Tutor, we are a curation service, really. Like Rory said, Carl Rogers comes up with the base theory. It was written some time ago. Maybe Rory does a lecture on explaining what those conditions are and how they appear and what we might look out for. We wouldn't reference Rory of Counselling Tutor with the theory of Carl Rogers. We would go to the original person who wrote it. And every single Counselling Tutor lecture and every single downloadable resource we have in Counselling Tutor has a reference list at the bottom where the information is taken from. So our team, we have an academic team And within our academic team, we have at the very top of that Rory, who's our academic leader, who kind of looks over everything. We have a number of tutors in Counselling Tutor. We have researchers and we have writers in Counselling Tutor. And it's a curation process. It is when you, as students, might speak about misunderstanding of a theory or a concept, we would go and find out all the information. We go to all the core texts, bring that together, and then think, how can we put that over in a way that makes it easily understandable? But then we link to the original resources so that you can read our curation and go, I've got a much better understanding of the 19 propositions now, but let me now go and back to the original work written by Rogers, read it again, and if I'm going to write an assignment, I'm going to quote it from there. And I think that's an easy way of putting it over. I don't know if I've done that justice, Rory.
Yeah, I think you have, Ken. Our colleagues who teach, I think they're right in their assertion that when you reference, you should be referencing academic material. Certainly, you would be citing Freud or Rogers, not Rory or Ken, because obviously they are the ultimate source of the theory. So that's really, really important. And if this feels just, maybe a little complicated, you're doing your referencing, you're thinking, oh God, this is really, really complicated. If you go to episode 361 of the Counselling Tutor podcast, you find that by going to Counselling Tutor, the podcast tab, counsellingtutor.com, podcast tab, 361. In the show notes, we'll have a link to the reference section of our website. You click on it and it's all laid out for you, so you can have a look, and it's explained in a way that really, really does make sense. That you use any reference you find on the website as a way of building your understanding, so that you're then able to access the literature and able to quote the literature with confidence. There are some exceptions. So if you're a member of our Counsellor Study Resource Library, and we have a lot of lecturers who quote on things like self-harm, for instance, or suicidal ideation. You could quote those because these people are experts in their own right. They have produced a lecture because this is their area of expertise. But when it comes down to core theories, really the best people to quote are the people who wrote them.
Yes.
Even if their texts are a little bit impenetrable.
Take the stress out of your counselling studies and get the support of Rory and I by joining us in the Counselling Study Resource. Counselling Study Resource, or CSR for short, is the world's most comprehensive assignment guidance and study support resource for students just like you of counselling and psychotherapy. See how Counselling Study Resource can help you. Visit counsellingtutor.com. That's counsellingtutor.com. I guess the difference, as you've kind of pointed it out there, Rory, where we will have maybe a lecture on self-harm or another topic, that we bring in an expert within their field. They might have done their own research, have their own findings, and they're presenting that in a lecture. It's their work. Of course you can cite them. When Rory and I are speaking about a counselling theory, if we're speaking about Freud, you're going to cite Freud for psychoanalytic theory. You're going to cite Rogers for core conditions. You're going to cite Beck for CBT. You're going to cite Egan for the skilled helper. It's not our work. We are curating it. We're bringing it together, trying to put it in easy to understand language. So, Rory, you kind of mentioned how people might get the references link. I'm going to give you a real shortcut to find that. If you go to counsellingtutor.com/reference, you'll find our reference page. And it says how to reference counsellor, how you should use Counselling Tutor in your academic work. When should you not cite Counselling Tutor? And I just want to say that this page is built as much for tutors, counselling tutors, as it is for students. Yeah, so it's not just for you as students. You can reference this page to your tutors as well. And then when is it appropriate to cite Counselling Tutor? And Rory's just mentioned one instance there. Another instance where you may reference Counselling Tutor is any of the literature that we've put out. So Counselling Tutor, we have 3 books that we have published under Counselling Tutor. They are written by us, and you can quote the books because they are published books. And then, of course, within the page of references, again, using bibliographies on Counselling Tutor articles, how to do that, correct versus incorrect referencing, summary for learners, and a note for tutors and training providers, all on our /reference page. If there is any misunderstanding or murkiness, I guess, around that topic. Any final thoughts on that, Rory?
Well, we don't like murkiness, do we? That's for sure.
No, we don't want murky. Yeah,
no, we
don't want someone to get their assignment. They hand in their assignment and the information is right, but they get it knocked back and with it saying you referencing Ken and Rory, and it's not their work. Yeah,
and maybe some tutors may find our way of decoding information quite helpful, because I'm sure there are a lot of tutors who listen to this who think it is a bit tricky. If you read things like client-centered therapy, they are quite intellectual tomes, so sometimes a little bit of help just to decode what's meant, which then leads you to be able to read the text better, is a great idea.
Yeah, and I guess that's what tutors do, because Rory and I were tutors. We stood in front of counselling students at practice level doing this exact job. It's what your tutor does in your academic setting. They stand and they take the theory of whoever the theorist is and they put it into a way that you are able to understand it. They teach it to you. What we do in Counselling Tutor is we just create those same kind of resources that you can access when you need that information. I guess one of the things we saw when we were tutoring is that we might cover a theoretical concept at the beginning of the term, and the student might be asked to write about that and reference that topic months and months later, and they have to go back on their notes. And we like to have within Counselling Tutor lectures that you can revisit at the time where you need it, but it is only to refresh that theory and point to the theorists themselves. So if you are using Counselling Tutor in your studies, and I know that thousands are, it's really worth visiting our reference page just to make sure that you are looking after yourself and, as we said, Rory, keeping away from that murkiness.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I hope that the tutors who listen to this realise our intent. Our intent is to help students pass their exams, make their lives easier, because it is training to be a therapist is tough. And if you can find a different way of explaining something so it makes sense, so people can access the literature and make that make sense, then I can't say anything wrong with that. And I think certainly as a former tutor, I think that's very helpful when someone understands it. I don't think it's good enough to quote and hope. I think learn and speak is better. Someone should really understand the information, not just be able to quote it. So that's what Counselling Tutor does and has done for the last 10 years, I think.
It has, yes. It's over 10 years now. And we have always had an open door for any learning institution, tutors, to speak with us. And in fact, one of our key relationships in Counselling Tutor is with CPCAB, which is the largest counselling training organisation in the United Kingdom. We meet up regularly to understand what is going on and how we can best help. And our resources have been referenced a number of times by CPCAB over the years and continue to be so. And so we're looking to help and support. And I guess most of our resources for students that you might be referencing are free to access as well. We're not doing it as a monetization. We do it as a service because we were called into this because we saw challenges with our own students. We do have a paid for section for students, which is our library, our student library. And why is it a paid for section? Is it a money-making scheme? Well, we pay lecturers to come and deliver the content within there. So we get tutors and we get experts in the field to come in and deliver that content there. So that's kind of how that works, and that's why it's paid for. Whereas on the outside, the outward facing, our resources, our podcast, our YouTube videos, all free to access. And behind every single one of those, it's not just me and Rory, there's an entire team. We've got 20 people working within Counselling Tutor, within our team, all coming together and in some way adding to that. We have checks, balances, academic checks and references that go in, and every bit of content that goes out on our site or on our podcast or on our YouTube, there is a link at the bottom asking if anything is outdated, if anything is wrong, get in contact. And when people do get in contact, we go back to the literature, we re-look at it, because we really want to have the most up-to-date, referenceable content on Counselling Tutor. And if you're a student, you haven't used Counselling Tutor, there's a search engine on Counselling Tutor that will search through all of these free resources. Go to counsellingtutor.com, click on the student tab to say that you're a student. Just scroll a bit down that page and you'll just see a little search bar. And if you put your theory or your concept or your thing that you're looking for in there, it's going to take you to all of the resources, all of the free resources that Counselling Tutor has on those. Any final words, Rory, before we leave referencing and Counselling Tutor and why we do what we do?
Well, I think that as two autistic and dyslexic students, we understood how difficult it was to access academics. There was times that I would be sobbing over my assignments, and I don't know about you, Ken. And
Yeah,
I'm sure there was. And it's for some it's not easy, and some of the people that we taught who are brilliant therapists may not have got to where they had got to if it hadn't have been for the fact that Ken and myself spent a lot of time trying to make the theory accessible, not dumbing it down, but explaining it in a different way so that contemporary students could understand what was written in the 1950s. I don't know about you, Ken, but I'm mightily proud of that. So,
me too.
Yeah, and I think that that's why we did it. That the YouTube channel started off and me looking a lot younger and a lot more sprightly, I have to say.
Without a beard.
Without a beard, and I looked cherubic. A cherubic look to myself, Ken, in those days, in 2011, which seems a lifetime away. I made the videos for my students.
Yep.
I made them for my students, so my students would have a better understanding of what was quite complicated theory. And hey, Ken, didn't we produce some real brilliant therapists? We worked together with our students, and I was in contact with some of them, and they're really making a change in the world. So mightily proud is what I would say. Mightily proud of what we've accomplished.
Yeah, I agree with you, Rory. We're very proud of what we're doing. It makes us sad when it's maybe misunderstood or it's not looked at with the intention that we put it out. And I mean, as an organisation, we are organisational members of the BACP, of the NCPS. We were awarded NCPS Quality Resource Tick. And we were the first organisation to get that because of the time and the effort and the dedication that gets put into what we put out. We cross the T's, we dot the I's, and we're talking about the free resources here. So this stands aside from our paid resources. And you're 100% right, Rory. We do this because we believe it serves clients, because a counsellor who is tripped up by academic criteria. And we saw this all the time when we were tutoring. You'd have a student. Remember, you'd see a student. They were incredible. You'd observe them in a skills session, and the hairs would stand up on my arms, and I'd get tears in my eyes. And I was thinking, what an incredibly powerful, empathic human being that's going to go out and make a difference. But sometimes they'd really struggle with the academic work because they'd come into training in their 50s and they hadn't been in education for decades, and now they're suddenly asked to compare and contrast and critically evaluate, and it's tricky. And we wanted to make those academic hurdles easier to get over by taking the stuff and just saying it in a different way, in plain English. So that's what we do. We continue to do it. Over 40,000 students over those 10 years have joined our library. And I like to hope that we've made a difference out there, Rory. We have over 1 million visits to our site every year. I'd like to hope that those that download the resources and get something from it. We have 63,000 subscribers on YouTube and hundreds of thousands of views per month of those videos on skills, on theory, all free, all built from the heart in service of counsellors and psychotherapists and making a difference at client level. And just enough time, Rory, for me to say that this has been episode 361 of the Counselling Tutor Podcast.
Yes, well, after that monologue, we started off with ethical, sustainable practice. Why counsellors feel isolated, what helps, and a little bit of a call to arms to take care of ourselves because, hey, we definitely deserve it for the work we do and the emotional labour we put in. In Practice Matters, we spoke to the wonderful Claire Ratcliffe about feeling safe versus being safe in therapy. And a little reminder, Claire has done, I think, a couple of lectures in our Counsellor CPD library, and she's going to do another lecture for us, hopefully do another one on this very thing, feeling safe versus being safe. And in student services, we talked about how to reference non-academic resources in assignments and sort of cleared up some confusion that may have been around. We'd like to thank you for your likes, shares and subscriptions. And until the next time we meet, stay grounded and stay safe.
Thank you for listening to the Counselling Tutor Podcast. Find the show notes for this episode by visiting counsellingtutor.com.